Good morning once again, everyone. Good morning, Raj. Welcome.
Good morning, Manav.
Before we start, I just thought we had asked for a poll, everyone, and if you go back and look at the poll results, we had asked how comfortable are people taking flights. 0 to 3 months is at 44%, 3 to 6 months is at 27%, 6 months or later is 23%, and already flown is 6%. So I guess we have a long way to go before, Raj, we can fill up hotels, because if only 6% of India is flying, I think we have some problems ahead, at least in the short term. Ladies and gentlemen, let me formally introduce you to Rajeev Menon. He is fondly called Raj. He's the president of Asia Pacific Marriott, excluding China. Today, Raj and I are going to talk about rebooting operations. And I will have a few more polls. So while we talk, hopefully we'll get people to go and vote out there. Raj, the last 4 years of your leadership has really been tested. And first it was the acquisition of Starwood, and then subsequently the two entities, and now COVID. What has been more challenging and why?
So, Manav, first and foremost, thanks for having me, and it's a real pleasure to see you and to be part of this forum. As for the last 4 years, I will say this, that I became COO in March of 2015, and within a year, Marriott had announced Starwood takeover, and I became president about October last year, and within 6 months, we had COVID. I would take a Starwood style acquisition any day of the week. Both Starwood acquisition and COVID have been incredible learning experiences, but COVID clearly is been the hardest, call it learning or journey that we've had over the last 6 months. And let me explain why. First and foremost, I think it's very important for all of us to remember it's turned into a big humanitarian crisis. When you really look around the world, to over 25 million people infected, close to 900,000 dead, and look at how things are tracking across in India or other parts of the world, it has been pretty tough, which has then triggered a pretty deep economic crisis. And when you look at just our industry, we have been hit by far the hardest. Revenues have gone down by 80 to 90%. And then finally, there's really been no playbook on how to deal with this kind of stuff, right? And what I've found quite interesting is almost every market, every government has reacted a bit differently. So in many cases, the steps we've had to deploy to manage our businesses had to be a little bit different in different parts of Asia Pacific, let alone the world. So COVID has definitely been one tough journey.
Right. And you said, you cover, I think, pretty much the whole of Asia Pac, other than China. Tell us which countries are doing a good job of keeping the tourism going, and are there countries that have lagged behind or could be learning from others?
So I'll tell you, when you really, sit back and say, what were the 3 things one would expect from governments to do when a situation like COVID comes about? First and foremost, our request was for governments to help people in the business of tourism. Anybody who was employed in tourism, we were all hurting pretty badly. The second thing we've been pushing for is governments to help support businesses in tourism. And then finally, we've been working with many governments to stimulate travel, and in many cases, domestic travel. So when you take these 3 criteria that I just described, at least in my part of the world, I've got about 22 countries that I oversee. you would expect that mature markets like Japan, Korea, Australia, and Singapore would do well, and they did. They supported pretty much in all of those three areas. The one country I do point out that I personally feel has done a good job has been Thailand. And we all know how much Thai economy relies on tourism. It's over 20% in terms of just GDP contribution. But the Thai government actually came out very quickly, and for anybody employed in tourism that did not have a job could get social security benefit of $300 a month for up to 6 months. That we thought was really good government initiative to help people who were employed in the business of tourism. They obviously helped. They helped the businesses in many different ways, be it tax, restructuring, loans, so on and so forth. And then finally, this piece about stimulus. Thai government initiated, $720 million domestic stimulus, where like Japan, like Korea, they're giving incentives for domestic population to travel and experience hotels, go to different destinations. And even with a small population base, it's actually helped quite a bit. So that would be the one example for me that stands out. Now, a number of governments have done different things. And from our perspective, we continue to work with governments across the board and share best practices in terms of how they could offer support for our industry at large.
Right. Before I ask you the next question, I'm going to encourage the viewers. We have 1,050 viewers to go take some polls because I like to share them before Raj leaves. But Raj, any takeaways from us sitting in India for the government out here, your perspectives? So,
to be perfectly honest, as an industry, we were hoping for more support during this period. I think the latest approval in terms of allowing hotels to restructure their loans will definitely help quite a bit, but particularly in terms of tourism-related industries, anybody that's employed in the world of tourism, they are doing it very, very tough. And from my perspective, I continue to urge and request through different forums, and I know my colleagues like Neeraj and many of our owners are doing the same, to continue to lobby the government to provide some kind of support for people that are employed in the world of tourism in India.
Right. Raj, even Matthew was referring to leisure travel, and we've seen that. But do you see business travel is going to agree with the statement that business travel is going to take longer to recover? And A, do you agree with the statement? And secondly, do you think some of the shift is going to be permanent?
So will it take longer to recover? The answer is yes. Will it be permanent? I don't necessarily believe so. And again, let me just take you back to, say, the last 2 or 3 crises the world has faced, some man-made, some otherwise. When you look at time during SARS, or you look at 9/11 terror attacks, everybody said travel would stop, right? Nobody's going to travel long distance because you've got all these security and other challenges hurdles that one has to jump through. But what we've seen pretty much through last year, the world of travel was growing at an exponential pace. And you look at business travel, you look at leisure travel. Leisure travel definitely was growing 4x that of business travel, but business travel, had also been growing consistently. So I am a believer that once confidence comes back in the market, once vaccine and a treatment is available, that knowing us as humans, we are social animals. We like to get out, interact, that we will see business travel return. It will, however, take longer than leisure travel.
Right. Well, let me at this point share with you. We asked the people as to when they and their family would be taking a weekend off, and 0 to 3 months, 36%, 3 to 6 months, 25%, 6 months later, 31%, and 8% have already taken a holiday. I'm one of those 8%, but so that's interesting that some level of travel is going to come back. And one last survey that we did was how people will travel. Was it road with a personal vehicle, rail, and air? And 12% of the people went on a road with their own vehicle was 63%, and rail was only 1%, and then air was 24%. So I think that is something that we expected. Coming back, are you seeing amongst your brand certain brands being affected more than others? So, for example, the Ritz-Carlton, which is right at the top, vis-a-vis, let's say, a Courtyard or a Fairfield Marriott. And I'm not talking about India. I'm talking across the region. Are you seeing any of these brands being affected more than others?
So let me say this. When we look at across our portfolio, it's evident that our resorts, particularly resorts that are in a drive destination, have done exceedingly well in comparison to other hotels. That's the first part. And that could be luxury, that could be premium or upper upscale, or for that matter, in the select service space. In terms of MICE hotels, that are by far the most challenged. So those are the two extremes to keep in mind. Many of our hotels, even in city centers, have transformed themselves into staycation hotels and done all kinds of different activities to drive business. And when I look across luxury, premium, and select serve, I would say today they're all holding their own, but it was very clear that resorts were the first to gain traction, particularly in the drive-through destinations. When I look at a place like Maldives, to be perfectly honest, all our hotels have been shut, and we would not open them till 1st of October. But when you look at, say, in India's case, the JW Mussoorie, we opened it, and within the first month, we made GOP.
Right. I'm going to take a question from the audience. Satish Jairam, you may know him. What percentage of your staff has been laid off or furloughed or even on sabbatical? And I guess it doesn't have to be India, but across the region.
Many of our associates have been displaced, but I will say at any given time, the deepest time of the crisis, which is about 3 months ago now, say around May, close to 45% of my hotels were shut just in Asia Pacific, ex-China. So I'm responsible for about 420 odd hotels in our region. And as I said, 45% were shut at any given time, which means most of those associates were displaced. Today, that number is down dramatically. We still have about 8 to 10% hotels that are shut, as I talked about markets like Maldives. But in most cases, what we have done is put our teams on severe contingency, but still making sure people are getting paid where they are located.
Right. And globally around the world, and of course, both brands and hotel owners are stressed about the debt burden of hotels. COVID is obviously hurting them. What has Marriott done to perhaps ease some of the stress for the owners?
So, as you know, COVID has been a real challenge. And as I look back, there's really been 4 specific things. And first and foremost, it was around cash management, right? And didn't need to be in the world of hotel business. You could be in any business, restaurants or anywhere. It was about how much cash you have, because it was fight for survival over the next 6, 9, 12 months, including Marriott as a company. So first thing we did was just take a good hard look at the cash situation in every single one of our businesses. And then we did two other things. One was put our hotels across the board, our teams on severe contingencies. And that meant tiered, salary cuts, or what we call as leave without pay, from general managers right down to associates in many cases. And then third, to me, which actually was critically important, there were some hotels very early on we saw that simply didn't have the cash and would not survive. We looked at other ways of supporting the owners, like taking money from FF&E reserve, because in our contracts, our hotels are expected to maintain a separate FF&E reserve. And we've been looking at, taking money from there to help with cash flow, and other measures to support the challenges that our hotels faced at that particular time. We also took a hard look at every bit of above property cost, or say the reimbursables that Marriott would charge to owners. And we dropped those quite a bit. What we did not do, because as I said earlier, it was a need for survival for all of us, was to cut our fees, because our fee revenues are down 80-90% already in the worst of the periods. And then finally, I will say this, that it has been incredible to watch the creativity and innovation that teams have deployed. I mean, I can tell you about a few hotels that knew that they just literally would not be able to survive, and they came up with some great ideas of selling prepaid packages where we collected considerable amount of cash, and this is not just in India, in many locations.
Yeah, I saw that.
To help with the cash flow, be able to save jobs and pay some salaries. Marriott on Wheels and other concepts that that the teams have come up with across Asia Pacific have truly been admirable to watch, because that's helped us, and in many cases has been applauded by our owner partners.
So Raj, I have 2 minutes to go. One good takeaway from COVID and how we operate hotels.
So, Manav, my view always is, in any crisis, there's always a silver lining. We need to recognize those opportunities. And the other thing I would say is never lose out on a good crisis. So one of the things we've done is use this opportunity to reimagine our world, relook at every one of our businesses. We've done a fair bit of adjusting. So to give you specific examples, the ability now to multi-skill across disciplines would be one that would stay for a long time. Using technology that we had been talking about, but just really hadn't advanced it as much, using technology to bring efficiency into our system and improve personalization, I think it's going to be here to stay for a long period of time.
And are you flying? Sorry, I know we are out of time, but are you flying, Raj? Have you flown?
Last time I sat on a plane was 20th of February, coming back from Seoul, Korea. Unfortunately, with Singapore, we are very tightly controlled here. I can try and get out of here, but I would not be able to come back. So I've had to make that decision that once Singapore opens its borders for international travel, then of course I'll be the first one on a plane.
Okay, thank you, Raj. We hope you'll make it to India soon. I know you have family back here, so hope you'll be able to get on a plane. Be safe. Thank you, Marriott, for everything that you've done. I know a lot of your colleagues are on the call today, so thank you, Raj.
No, thanks so much, Manav, and I look forward to seeing you sooner than many of us hope. As soon as travel starts, And thank you again for having me. And thanks for everybody that's
Sure.
there listening and part of this business, because I have a strong belief that we will bounce back and will bounce back stronger. So stay
All right.
strong and take care.
Thanks, Raj.
Thanks so much.